Hello, I'm Virginie Likens from Roland-designs. When people ask me what I do, and I tell them I do reproductions of antique embroidery patterns and samplers, they usually look at me and go, "Oh, so you stitch and do those kind of reproductions and sell them?" And I say, "No, I do digital reproductions." And then often they look at me a little perplexed and wonder what I'm talking about. So I thought I would make a little video and explain a little bit what goes on behind the scenes of Roland-designs. I have with me here a beautiful school sampler stitched in 1895 by Bertha Richer. It's a very straightforward sampler stitched on Penelope canvas with only cross stitch in 2 colors. So each of those little stitches here are a little cross, a little X. And what I will do is I will copy this into a software where each little square here represents one of the little cross stitch. It's a pretty straightforward job when the sampler is this simple and in this beautiful condition. But sometimes I get samplers that are missing pieces, like maybe some of the threads are gone, or it's gotten damaged, or there's holes. So I have to take a little bit of creative license and add the missing pieces. And I can do this very easily on my software. I don't just do reproductions of samples that are already stitched. I also copy digitally these old hand-painted or hand-drawn or hand-colored patterns. This one here is a sajou. It's from the late 1800s. It's a dog, and it was originally printed, the pattern, on a very small grid. If you look carefully behind the small lines and small dots, afterward an artist went over with a very fine flat brush and colored the areas to tell you which color to use to make the pattern. And I do the same thing. I will count and recount and do all those little tiny little squares into a digital software. This pattern here is very beautiful and also in very good condition, but some patterns, like this one over here, are damaged. It's a beautiful composition, a lovely scene, and many colors, but there has been at one point some kind of humidity or water damage because the card is very, very soft. And there's places where the paint is worn off, and as a creator I will have to think, okay, what did the original artist think? What did they want? Would this be a dark yellow or a light yellow? And this is something I can do on the software. I can fix it and I can see if I think it looks good or if it needs to be changed. And well, this is a very time-consuming process, and I am sure that there might be or will come a form of artificial intelligence program where you could scan one of these old designs and have the artificial intelligence fill in the gaps for you. I feel that out of respect for the craftsmanship and the skill of the original designers or stitchers who worked on these pieces, that it is a labor of love, a labor of conservation, to try to put yourself into the mind of the artist or the stitcher and reproduce it the way they would have wanted to do it, and not use a machine to try to guess what could have been. Though I do believe it could be a tool in some circumstances. For me personally, I prefer the hand contact with the actual handiwork of our past. So this one here is one of those patterns that would probably require quite a few hours to finish due to the huge amount of colors and details and also the damage on it. I have behind me a sampler here from 1771, and as a collector I feel that it is our duty to also make our collection available to the general public, not just in pictures or scans, but also in reproductions where you can actually stitch them for yourself or stitch part of them. When I finish a pattern, I turn it into a PDF, and this is more like what you would get if you downloaded one of my patterns. It would be a PDF file with a small explanation, a picture of the digital reproduction, as it would look like. There will be a page or two with the color suggestion and tips or ideas on how you can do the embroidery yourself. I do recommend DMC cottons. embroidery floss because of their quality and their beautiful and large palette, but I am not sponsored by DMC to say this, so if you prefer to use Anchor or Venus or your own favorite brand or hand-dyed fibers, you can also do that. I've just used DMC in all my patterns, so there will be a continuity. I will also add as much as possible information about the pattern. For example, this one here, I've added a little bit of the history behind the pattern, anything I would know about it, maybe where I bought it or which country it came from, and a photo of the original, so that you can see a little bit how the original pattern would have looked like. And then the pattern comes in color usually, and also in black and white for those who prefer not to use so much ink. Those patterns here can be printed, they can be enlarged, they can be cut and glued together. You can take a marker and mark over where you've done. You decide yourself how you want to use them. The thing that's nice about those patterns is you can also use them on your tablets. I know many of you do, and they are programs. You can also just use them on the tablet in a picture program where you highlight what you've done. It's also easier to make them enlarged if you want to follow easier on the pattern. So this is what a PDF would look like if you download one of my patterns. I sell many of those patterns on Etsy, but I also have on my website a full catalog of all the different patterns and samplers I have recharted since 2008. And many of my older patterns are now available for free on the website. I feel like it's part of my duty to preserve our needlework heritage by making them available to you for as low cost as possible. And the profit goes back into the website, it goes into supplies, and it goes into adding new items to the Roland-design collection. And all of these beautiful patterns, I know there's many of them available online, and there's many collectors who are also doing this, putting them out there for you to be able to also enjoy. You have to remember that some of them might even be quite simple, like maybe they are schoolwork from children, but they all have a value in our history, in our culture, and also in the development of new techniques. For example, 150 years ago, you would have had to purchase a pattern that was hand-painted. They were quite expensive. Well, now you can get copies that you can copy as many times as you want, and you can share them with your friends, or you can use them several times over. They don't get damaged the same way the originals would have been. So this is making needlework more accessible to the general public, to everyone. And I do feel there is something very special with these antique patterns, because they also are part of our history. For example, this one from 1771, imagine when that sampler was being stitched, James Cook was finishing his first trip around the world. He was the first man to sail around the world. So it puts together a little bit our sense of community and our sense of belonging. George III ruled in England, and in France we still had a king. We had Louis XV. And here I have a sampler made at that time period. And I don't know exactly who Elizabeth Gareth was who stitched it, but they're becoming more and more rare. And this one is very damaged. There's moth holes in it, so I can't even open the glass. And if we don't produce them or reproduce them for future generations, they will be lost forever. So I hope that you appreciate the time and effort that goes into recreating faithful replicas of these patterns, and that you also enjoy using them to make needlework and your own heirlooms. And remember, there's nothing more enjoyable and more satisfying than creating something with your hands. It also makes lovely gifts, and if nothing else, you get the satisfaction of creating, of producing something in the same methods and techniques that was done hundreds of years ago.